Sanderson visited Warsaw and gave a talk that was translated into Polish. So what we're watching, I think it's only like a 15-minute video. Now, we tend to pause every minute. I say we. I'm the only person in control of the pausing. Yeah, so apparently, and with a translated talk, as you might imagine, there's long segments of pausing for the translator to translate. Universal translators, Star Wars. I'm having trouble getting going. Maybe it's because I have a bad motivator. Yeah, it's like a 15-minute talk because the other half of the runtime would have been it being translated. So it's a little herky-jerky, but nothing is cut out of the actual talk that Sanderson is giving, if that makes sense.
In addition to the trials that we're all experiencing because we're living in the last days, you, dear brothers and sisters, have been going through a tremendous period of stress. Now, you know the situation. In February, Russia invaded Ukraine, but immediately the branch office in Ukraine organized 27 disaster relief committees. The brothers here in Poland formed 16 disaster relief committees. And something similar has happened in Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Moldova, and many other places. So we appreciate that many of you have had to leave your homes. You've had to leave behind your jobs and your possessions. You've had to leave your family members, and perhaps you have even lost some of your family.
So we start out with some statistics. That is how we know that God's blessing is upon something. The numbers are big and the line goes up, and it's good when the line goes up, to quote Folding Ideas. Yeah. They formed committees, they did things, and people have died. So we'll see. We'll see what did they actually do, and what is the what's the comfort that they provided that they provide here in the stream.
Members in death. Now, in addition to coping with all of those things, some of you may also have serious health problems that make it very difficult to cope with this situation. And then add to it one of the worst things that we have to face in situations like this. That is just simply the uncertainty, just not knowing where the situation is leading, not knowing what's going to come next, having to make decisions, what are you going to do? And wondering, how are things going to work out for yourselves and your families? Well, let me assure you, brothers, that we do understand this situation and that...
Oh, okay. You might think we don't, but we do. So there. Period. And yeah, he did kind of, Techie Ben, he did kind of brush off like, listen, I know people are dying and you've lost people and that's sad, but calm down. We know what's going on. We do understand. And yes, of course, not the loss of life. It's the uncertainty. That is the worst part of all.
Our brothers and sisters all over the world are thinking about you, and they are praying on your behalf. I have to say...
Oh, well, there you go. Well, the thoughts and prayers are going out. So, hey, yeah, pretty good pause phase.
At World Headquarters in Warwick, our brothers pray on behalf of the brothers in Ukraine and Russia every day. And that also applies to the meetings of the governing body, the branch committee, and all the other committees. Well, what does all that mean?
What does all that mean? I don't know. I don't really know what all that means. I mean, what do they do when they get together? Are they just like, well, we should pray for our brothers in Ukraine because that sounds sucky? I mean, how involved do they get in their conversations with, like, can we take in refugees? Can we use our kingdom halls as, places of refuge? I don't know. I don't know what kind of conversations they have. But so far, we're very much in the thoughts and prayers stage of everything. And we've been reassured that the governing body prays and the branch committees pray. And doesn't that kind of imply that if they didn't pray, then nothing would happen. Like, why is God's intervention dependent on the governing body praying people? Like, why is his help dependent on the right people in the right positions of authority praying the right amount for the right thing at the right time? Because, it has to be the right time as well. And yeah, that's another thing I noticed, Ryan. I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to go too hard on the fella, but now that you mention it, he's got some age spots on his head, or maybe all of our computer screens are dirty.
It means that you are very, very loved people. And isn't it wonderful to know that even during these difficult times, the love of Jehovah is so obvious toward all of you.
It's so obvious. It's so obvious that his love is on everybody. Not the people whose territory gets invaded and whose families are murdered, and who are displaced from their homes. It doesn't seem like he loves them as much because he lets worse stuff happen to them. But God doesn't stop the bad things from happening. He just helps you once the bad things start, and he won't stop the bad thing. He does sometimes, but not all the time. You can't count on it for some reason, but he can help you. He can scatter some special spirit sprinkles on you, and that'll give you the power to just kind of fortify yourself, like your interiority as a person. I guess that's how Holy Spirit works. It does look like he's looking at his phone. He might have his notes on his phone. TBF. Well, let's see what he's got here. Because if I'm a person who has been displaced from my home, or is terrified that is going to happen, or I'm forced to flee, or family and friends have been killed, I'm thinking, does God really exist, and why would he allow this to happen? This notion of universal sovereignty, is God's name, literally his reputation, is more important than the life and death of human beings? And doesn't it say something about his qualifications to rule, that he lets people die innocently? You could ask these things. So maybe he's going to address this stuff in his talk.
At this, the serpent said to the woman, "You certainly will not die. God knows that in the very day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and bad." What was the devil saying to Eve? He was saying, you're going to be happier if you stop listening to God. You should rule yourself. You should be independent from Jehovah. Well,
yeah. And this is something that I can't quite figure out, which is are they saying, and I have a whole video about this, so I'll try not to rehash it too much, but is it that Satan is in charge of the world, or is it that man is in charge of the world? Is man ineffective at ruling because they're just ineffective at ruling without God's help? Or are they ineffective at ruling without Satan's influence? We've got two variables that we need to control for. He forgot to separate out the variables. So it's oh, now you added salt and pepper to the mix, and now I don't know what's making it taste better. That's a good analogy, right? By the way, if I'm Satan, I'm pointing to the war in Ukraine and being God could have stopped that, right? And he just didn't, and doesn't every day, just keeps letting it happening because he really thinks that the more important thing is teaching me, Satan, a little lesson for a while. And then I get to come loose again and kill some more people. And then I die for real, apparently. But I've got over 1,000 years in me for sure. This actually doesn't seem like food at the proper time, TBH. It seems like this would be a good time to acknowledge people's frustrations and fears and concerns, maybe even anger, like the psalmist often expressed. Woe is me. Why do you allow this to happen? I'm being torn apart. My enemies are after me. Maybe that sort of thing. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll get into it.
Eve agreed, and Adam joined her. But this situation was not just an attack on God's name and his reputation. It was an attack on God's sovereignty. You see, his right to be the absolute ruler of his creation. Well, now Jehovah could have just stepped in and...
This is such a fascinating thing that they have focused on. It's not just them, but it's interesting how it applies to them and the extent to which they take this, because their contention is it is about God's sovereignty. It is about his right to rule mankind. So that's what sovereignty means to them. The right to rule mankind. I don't think that's necessarily what sovereignty means like in the dictionary. That's what it means for Jehovah's Witnesses. And they are saying Satan questioned God's authority. They questioned his leadership of his people. How dare he? How dare he question God? And in order to teach him a lesson, we're going to have to destroy Satan, and we're going to have to teach people a lesson. We can't just allow people to go around questioning our authority. I mean, God's authority. You know, like they really, this entire ideology is like projecting the worst fears of a cult leader onto God. It is like God apparently is really concerned about people talking about his reputation and what people are saying about him. And, you know, don't question my right to rule. Obviously, I created you. I brought you into this world. And, you know, that's not a good reason to love somebody. You know, just because a parent brings you out from their womb, it doesn't, they don't deserve implicitly and unquestioningly your respect or your love, because parents can be horrible monsters. And not my parents are not horrible monsters, but parents can lose the respect of their children if they are not loving, if they are neglectful. And this is literally what they describe Jehovah as being. He is a literally neglectful God. They really like this narrative, the don't question anything narrative. And yeah, let's get back into this.
Destroyed them, but he didn't. He determined to allow time.
Ah, yes, that's what I was saying. That this is somehow loving, and this is kind of a subtle justification for the disfellowshipping arrangement when you think of it. Like, he's allowing enough time for people to prove themselves, to come to know him, so that they don't die at Armageddon. And that's, you know, what they say disfellowshipping. It's a loving arrangement. He could have killed Adam and Eve, and he didn't. And this is like one of our last streams we got with Lavender Dreams and Taylor. We were talking about the fact that they have a lot of rhetoric in the older publications, especially, which is like, we know we want to kill apostates, but we can't. God tells us we can't, so we don't. But God can, and he will. Like, they really, and when you listen to their language about how they talk about war and being excited to participate in the War of Armageddon, it's clear, like, there is an implicit violence in the doctrine of Jehovah's Witnesses, despite them being pacifists and not getting involved with war. Like, there is a bloodthirst with them. They really, really are excited for the world to be destroyed, for people to die. And for the governing body, they're excited to be the ones who get to do the killing. So remember that when he's talking about all this stuff. MNK, is that true? 300,000 people are born every day? Yeah, it doesn't seem possible to keep up with that, but you know, I'm not God, sadly, contrary to what you may think.
To pass, so that people could rule themselves, and then it would become clear whether they really would be better off without God or not. Well, time.
I think we just heard the translator stopping. I'm like, hey, shut up for a second. Let me translate. This is the thing, you know, he didn't let humans rule themselves because they are under the influence of imperfection and Satan. per their theology, right? So the true challenge to this, the true answer to Satan's challenge would be to let a perfect being like God, like the angels, like Adam and Eve, to let someone perfect rule without Satan's influence and without God's influence and see where they end up. But God really didn't stack. He kind of stacked the odds in his favor. He's like, okay, you can rule for a while. But by the way, you can die now. You can get old and pass on diseases. Diseases, that's a new thing you're going to have to worry about, by the way. And I'm going to force you to commit incest. That's going to be kind of weird for a while, but it'll get less weird as time goes on. And, you kind of made things tough for them. It's almost like he's scared. This is some beta shit from the G-Man, from the big papa upstairs.
Would tell. Time would give the answer. But brothers and sisters, what has time revealed? Man has tried every type of government, one right after another. There have been...
They say this shit all the time. I hate this. Man has tried every form of government that exists so far. Like, you can find all these quotes from the 19th century of people saying everything that will ever need to be invented has been invented already. There's no greater miracle than human flight. Let's stop, people. We're not going to go to the moon. And fuck, people under feudalism thought that was it. Hey, what are we going to do? And yeah, they always say that they've tried every form of government. And it's like, they are setting the standard that a successful government would eradicate all wars, all diseases, all suffering and death. Like, okay, if that is the standard, then yes, no government has ever succeeded or can possibly succeed, and the only person that can bring that about is God. But that's not what most governments are trying to do anyway. Like, they're not trying and failing to do that. Anyway, I know the witness might say exactly. They are doing their best, and still they fail. And yeah. This is it, right? There's a lot of political systems that have been theorized, but never actually tried. Anarchism, market socialism, etc. Yeah, Sam. It's not like they have proof that God would do better. Like, God's track record of ruling mankind is an L. One game, one loss. He was ruler for like a day, seemingly, of human life. He made 2 people. And he kind of had to cheat with the second one and use some leftover parts from the first. They rebelled, like, immediately. And then the rest of human history has all been people doing shit without God, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to make the argument that he would do better, because he literally didn't when he was in charge. He didn't do better. So why would he? That's the thing. I think the idea of a God is great, but why this God? He doesn't seem so savory, this fellow.
Monarchies and democracies. There have been dictatorships. There's been fascism and communism. But none of them
fascism and communism.
Have brought happiness to mankind. Throughout all of it, humans have been caught in the middle, and people have suffered miserably. They've faced injustice, broken families, cruel treatment, poverty, hunger, sickness, and death. It's just exactly what the Bible says. The Bible says that it does...
I'll test you out on this, Bearwood. Let's see. Strax from Doctor Who. This is mean. It's mean that you said this. Brace yourself for the Dead Ringer. We didn't know this, but Sanderson is actually kind of from Hollywood royalty in a way. His brother is on Doctor Who. And yeah, pretty crazy. Might be a twin, but you can definitely see it. You can see the resemblance.
Not belong to a man who is walking even to direct his step. Well, by allowing this time to pass, Jehovah is establishing a precedent. Now, we're not absolutely at the end of this at this time, but now I want to ask you a question. Isn't it clear, even now, that Satan's rule has been a total and complete disaster? Do you agree? But now here's
What is this? What is this talk? I mean, that's a bit of a layup, I gotta say. You know, if you're trying to get applause, yeah, it's clap bait. Can we not agree, brothers, that Satan is bad? Yeah, and by the way, we've got Satanists in the chat, so we gotta put some respect on his name. Exactly, he's like literally demanding applause. Like, can you imagine what would happen if nobody applauded? That'd be really interesting to see what his reaction would be. Like, brothers, I said, don't you agree that Satan's system of things has been a failure?
another question. Why is it, during times of distress, that it appears that some people are protected and others are not? Does it mean?
Actual good question. Why are some people not being warred on? Why is Russia not doing war crimes on all the other countries? Well, he's got an answer. This is the big question. Techie Ben says this is the big Q. He didn't say that. I said it, but I was just abbreviating his comment. And Alyssa, yeah, exactly. If nobody clapped, next week at the meeting would be like, friends, let's look back to the Bible. At the end of the Sermon on the Mount, notice what it's. Oh, it doesn't say that they clapped at the end. Well, let me imagine that they did. They must have. It's reasonable to assume that they clapped.
That some were faithful to Jehovah and the others were not faithful? Well, let's look at the answer. You see, the Bible clearly shows that at times, Jehovah really has intervened to save individuals. But was that the rule? In other words, is that what always happened? Or was it the exception? Well, let's look at some examples.
Yeah, okay. I know what he's going to say. He's going to say it's the exception because it would be inconvenient for him if it was the rule, because then they'd say, well, why isn't he intervening now? So I'm really interested in how he's going to smooth over this particular transition. But he's got the receipts. We established, folks, last time that the Bible is really the receipts for God. You know, it's kind of like it's a proof of what God did. So he's got the receipts, and we're about to learn. We're about to get educated.
That we remember. So think of the 3 faithful Hebrews. Now we remember how Jehovah sent his angel and
controlled opposition. We need to arrange a convention surreptitiously only of apostates. Refuse to clap the entire time.
And he rescued those 3 faithful Hebrews from the fiery furnace. But think about other faithful prophets of Jehovah. They were just as faithful, but they were put to death.
This is such dangerous territory that he's walking on. Like, why would you bring up this big plot hole? Because your answer isn't satisfying. I know, because it is one of the things that woke me up.
There's another example. The Apostle Peter was delivered from the prison where he was imprisoned by Herod Agrippa I. It was a miraculous delivery. But this
Agrippa,
same
these
king
nuts.
also imprisoned the disciple James. And James was put to death by that same ruler. Jehovah did not intervene to stop. And think of this third example. Now Jehovah gave the apostles the power to cure the sick and even to raise the dead. But
yeah, why didn't he give that to everybody? Interesting. He's raising a lot of interesting questions. I would have trouble answering from the Bible.
You remember that the Apostle Paul appealed to Jehovah 3 times that he would take away that thorn in his flesh. And we understand that that was probably a physical health problem. But
I don't know why they say this. They're always like, and we assume, probably, it's reasonable to assume, we don't know for sure, but I mean, come on, guys, it was a physical health problem, this thorn in the flesh thing. And it's just like, why? Why is there a need? Why do you assume that? I assume, by the way, when I was a young witness, and I would read this passage to comfort myself about Paul too having a thorn in the flesh, I was always like, I'll bet it was horniness. I'll bet poor Paul was just horny, and occasionally he jerked it, just like me. Paul, he's like a celebrity, and they're just like us. So that's what I assumed it was. So it's not obvious to me, Mark Sanderson. Maybe he was, to be indelicate, spilling his semen upon the dirt.
Jehovah did not do it. He did not take that infirmity away from him. So what does this teach us? Well, the reality is that when a catastrophe strikes, anyone can be affected. Here's the Bible
Jules,
principle.
it's true.
It's Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 11. So let's read it together. It
Oh my
says,
God, he's going to read the semen upon the ground
part. I have
part.
seen something further under the sun, that the swift do not always win the race, nor do the mighty win the battle, nor do the wise always have the food, nor do the intelligent always have the riches, nor do those with knowledge always have success, because time and unexpected events overtake them all. So that's the reality. As humans, we are subject to time and unexpected.
You know what? What's the point of this? What's the point of this kind of religion, by the way? If it's just like things, the earth is random and full of chaos, and horrible things happen to good people for no reason, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So, but you could come to our church and we'll promise that eventually things will get better. Our founder also thought that things were going to get better in his lifetime, and he died, and then the next guy died, and the next guy died, and most of our former leaders have died not seeing the thing they thought was going to come in their lifetime. But yeah, it's a really nihilistic worldview. And Jules, yeah, I think that it is very possible. I think that we should start maybe there's a scholarly debate, but what about a normie, a dummy debate? I guess we're not dummies, but yeah, I don't know.
Events. And often we find ourselves in the wrong place at the wrong time. What is Jehovah doing for us right now? Well, you brothers know the answer to this question. No doubt.
No. That's what I wanted to know. So please, let's be specific.
You personally have been experiencing the love, the kindness, the generosity, and the support from your own brothers and sisters. Our brothers in Ukraine and in Poland have done a wonderful job in risking their safety, risking their lives to transport supplies, to transport people to safer areas. And
God helping looks a lot like humans helping. Like, it looks like it's just the kindness of people, but it's really the kindness of God through the people. So thank God. Don't thank them. Thank us, actually, and we'll tell them, because we got a special relationship.
And some of our brothers have even given their lives to accomplish this work. How do you feel about
this? Is why we're also like uneducated about geopolitics when we leave, by the way, because we're just like, well, I don't know, Satan's in control of everything, and sometimes bad shit happens for no reason. Everyone's crazy and being ruled by Satan, and so you wake up and you realize you gotta read some books. Hey, that's true. What if his encouraging talk to like Ukrainian refugees was about dinosaurs? Like, I know we're all wondering, is the same thing happening to us that happened to the dinosaurs? Let's talk about this. Mecha 666 _ 666. Sometimes Jehovah helps and sometimes he doesn't. And whether he does or does not is directly linked to whether humans help. Almost like he's not doing anything. And yeah, it is kind of weird. It's almost like the places where there is more like poverty and starvation and death are also places where there is less of a presence of organized groups like Jehovah's Witnesses. and maybe if there were more of them, then it would just so happen that there would also be more people there, and therefore more things would happen. I don't know. Good comment. Good comment. That's exactly what this is.
All of this love that has been shown to you, brothers, how do you feel about it?
Fuck this, by the way. This sucks.
The most important protection that we need is spiritual protection. And that's the protection that Jehovah has promised all of us. You see, physical protection is only temporary, but spiritual protection is forever. It reminds us.
I mean, it isn't. It isn't, because you can lose it at any time. It's forever, unless you fuck up. It's forever unless you do one of the approximately 1 million things that I forbid people from doing. And it's okay if you sin sometimes. Don't do it too much, but because we're all imperfect, but also don't be too imperfect. And you can't help it, but you can, right? And you should be. Yeah.
Of what the Bible says here in Romans chapter 14 and verse 8. It says, "For if we live to Jehovah. And if we die to Jehovah." So both if we live and if we die, we belong to Jehovah. So those simple words, what do they mean? It means that whether we live or whether we die, if we have a good relationship with Jehovah, we are completely safe with him. But now,
oops. If we have a good relationship with Jehovah, we are completely oops. He tried to skip over that little part there where it's like, if you have a good relationship with Jehovah, which, if you don't, yeah. That's a really good point. Well, first of all, this verse is not talking about Jehovah, because that word does not show up in the New Testament. He's talking about Christ. He's talking about the Lord. And they just put Jehovah there for some reason. And, he would, the language that Paul would use would be like, we die to Christ. Like that kind of universalism kind of vibes. I don't know. It's less creepy than he makes it sound, actually, in the context. But in his context, it's just like, hey, as long as you don't mess up and you die at the right time, because you could long enough to see yourself become the apostate, and we'd hate for that to happen. So better to die now, while you're an active witness, than to live long enough to accidentally fuck up and then lose your chance of everlasting life.
to accomplish this work. How do you feel about all of this love that has been shown to you, brothers? How do you feel about it?
It's a pep rally.
The most
it's
important
PR. It's
protection
spin.
that we need is spiritual protection. And that's the protection that Jehovah has promised all of us. You see, physical protection is only temporary, but spiritual protection is forever. It reminds us of what the Bible says here in Romans.
Sorry. I went back
So
too far.
both if we live and if we die, we belong to Jehovah. So those simple words, what do they mean? It means that whether we live or whether we die, if we have a good relationship with Jehovah, we are completely safe with him. But now let's switch gears and let's talk about how we can cope with this adverse situation. Now, our goal should be not just to survive this period, but we want to come out of this period with even stronger faith and with an even closer relationship with Jehovah. And that's what Jehovah has been teaching us every day, every week, every month, throughout our time in the truth.
He says a lot of the same things throughout the weeks and months and stuff like that, by the way. A lot of the amazing, miraculous things that God provides are just like a guy reading from a pamphlet that he got from his religious leaders dryly in a stage. You know, it's just like, it's mundane miracles. Keep on meaning to do a video about that, by the way. Is Deuteronomy 18:22 the one about false prophets, not fearing false prophets? I feel like it is. Somebody check me on that.
Think about our recent year text, Isaiah 30:15. Your strength will be in keeping calm and showing trust. Isn't it an amazing thing to consider that Isaiah 30:15 was the day text on the day when Russia invaded Ukraine? What a powerful reminder of what Jehovah was trying to tell his people. Now here's
Oh, shut the fuck up. This is so stupid. I mean, if he was really trying to tell his people something, why couldn't he have told them, like, hey, the fucking ban is coming. Hey, there's a war coming. You should protect yourself. Like, he did that a lot with his people, Israel. So why is he not doing that here? He just kind of gives a vaguely, like, maybe you should put this scripture on for your screensaver at the Kingdom Hall.
a recent experience from Ukraine. A doctor in Ukraine asked one of our brothers whether Jehovah's Witnesses are taking up arms to defend the country. Well, the brother explained that we love our neighbors and our Bible-trained conscience does not allow us to take up arms. The brother also explained that many of our fellow believers in Russia are in prison for this position, and that not a single Jehovah's Witness from Russia came to fight against Ukraine. If all people had such an attitude toward war, there'd be no war at all. Well, the brother also explained all about the scope of our Bible educational work. And he also explained
the brother explained that if more people were like us, there'd be no war. Not the doctor he was talking to. Okay. We'll see how made up this ends up sounding by the end of it. Yeah, by the way, are they just saying that, like, the daily text is like your horoscope? Like, reading into it like, ooh, this happened in my life today and this ties in with the text. That was God looking out for me.
Providing humanitarian help and care for refugees. Well, the doctor was very impressed, and he asked for literature. He even gave our brother his phone number, and since that time, the brother has been sharing articles with him. How do you think that brother feels about what has come about just from his effort to witness? No.
Fuck off. When you think about it, the war was worth it for this guy getting to give his doctor a fucking magazine and text some jw.org articles. I mean, when you think of it like that, it is actually kind of good that it happened. You know, we don't like it when wars happen, but Jehovah, and we don't say that everything happens for a reason, but we do actually believe that, because it's kind of what we always say. That's what we always imply when all these negative things happen. It's like, but look, some guy in a restaurant served a Jehovah's Witness, and instead of a tip, he was given a tract, and now he's me. That was me. That was me. I was that waiter, and I got the tip that was a tract.
That you don't neglect these basic things that can help you to stay strong spiritually during these difficult times. But here are some other simple, practical things that we also want to mention. Here's the first one. Find a good friend to talk with. Just being able to express yourself.
Oh, Jesus. Jesus H. Christ. Yeah, kind of infantilizing, right? And I don't know, like, whenever we would get this kind of advice as a witness, like, it would always be like, oh, and the advice they gave, it was so practical and so simple and encouraging. We need these simple reminders. You know, sometimes we just need to be reminded to reach out to a friend. And isn't that loving? And it's like, yeah, you know where else you could get that reminder? Literally anywhere. Literally anywhere. You could get that advice any place. Any generic shitty self-help book, any Reddit post, just anything. Sorry, that was hard. That was harsh, and he's only on point number one.
To a good friend can often take away some of your stress and anxiety. Here's the second one. Worrying about all of the things that could happen. Otherwise, anxiety can completely take over your mind. One famous saying says that worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow, It empties today of its strength. So true. Many of the things that we worry about never happen, but in the meantime, we lose all of our...
Unless you were worrying about the Russian invasion. That did happen, actually. And it was actually a pretty big deal. But a lot of the times, the stuff we worried about doesn't come true.
Energy, worrying. Here's the third one. Distinguish...
This is really good advice. Talk to your friends. You know, sorry if you lost friends in the war, by the way, but talk to the alive ones. And stop worrying so much. What good is that? What good is that going to do you worrying? Stop it. Stop your worrying about the war and the thing that's invading you and ruining your life. Stop that. About the bombs hitting your town. Hey, this is a good point, actually. In the moment, commenting, you can't join the army, you'd be DF'd. So it's like, yeah, when that guy is saying not a single witness came here to join the fight, well, they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to join the fight. I'll bet some people would. I'll bet some people would join if they could. But if they did, they would be kicked out and they wouldn't be considered a witness anymore. So you can, legally say that no witnesses came here to fight because they didn't count as a real witness if they did.
And the things that you can't. Sometimes there are things that we just have to accept. And if we understand that, then we can develop a more positive attitude. Here's the fourth. Be patient and be forgiving. When so many of you brothers and sisters from Ukraine have been...
All of this stuff is self-serving too. All of this stuff is to, I mean, I'm sure that there is some level of sincerity on his part because I believe that he believes what he's saying. But like, this is also very self-serving. This be patient and be forgiving. It's like, hey, don't grow impatient with us, the governing body, when we mess up, and be forgiving towards us when we make mistakes that, get people killed or, all sorts of horrible things. All sorts of words that can't necessarily be said on Twitch. So every one of these pieces of advice, I think it's always worth keeping in mind, could this also benefit him in a self-serving way? Like everything that they're ever saying is also self-serving. And I think it's kind of worth taking a step back and thinking about that. Well, yeah, Stitch R2, why would they self-identify as a JW while under ban? Logical much? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because they, advocate for lying to the government in some ways. They have lots of examples of it in the magazines of this is theocratic warfare. You don't necessarily have to be honest if they don't deserve to know the truth. But at the same time, if it's a good story, if it's good persecution porn, it's almost like they're kind of self-serving about when people should lie or not.
Displaced either to other countries or even within Ukraine, it has just been like a miracle how our brothers and sisters have come
a miracle.
But that may mean that you're living with other people now. Well, just being realistic, there are going to be times when we're going to irritate one another. But if we become angry or we lose control, that's only going to make the situation worse. So whether you're the person providing the help or you're the person receiving it, we need to be patient with each other. And
good advice for people who are seeking refuge after being ravaged by war. Be nice to the person whose house you're staying in, okay? Don't be mean. Don't be irritating, but also don't be irritated. Don't be irritated and don't be irritable. And if someone's offended, that's their fault for being offended, but also why are you offending people? You can never win.
What if your feelings are hurt about something? Well, use that situation as an opportunity to grow in forgiveness and in love. Well, I want to just remind you one more time just how much the governing body loves all of you brothers and sisters. We are very, very much concerned, every one of you. And we are going to continue to do everything that is in the power of our hand
very
to
interesting.
help you. That means that we are going to make sure that you have the spiritual food that you need, but we are also going to work hard to make sure you have the basic necessities of life. The brothers in the branch offices in Ukraine and in Poland and other nearby branches have been working so hard in caring for all of these arrangements. It truly has touched my heart personally.
Arrangements. I don't know. There's something so clinical about the word arrangements. It's like the phrase loving arrangement always feels like a oxymoron to me. And I just want to say, by the way, lest I, an hour and 15 minutes in, lest I come across like a hater, I'm very glad that witnesses help their members. I think that's very nice, and that was something that was always comforting to me as a witness, is knowing I had this community to fall back on. But they don't do it for anybody else, and that's legitimately, like, that's literally what Jesus said was, if you're only helping people of your own faith, then what are you doing? That's not helping anybody. That's not impressive. But that's what they do. And it's like, think of the good that could be done if their like volunteer labor was helping with other things, was helping the community at large and not just Jehovah's Witnesses. I think that's the thing that is more worthy of criticism than the fact that witnesses only help their own kind. You know, it's good that they help their members. I'm glad that they do that. And I know that the brothers listening to this talk do feel encouraged by it, but the Watchtower is not doing everything they can. You know, what would be really helpful is standing up to the authoritarian government that caused this invasion to the first place. Maybe sending some money to the members. Maybe sending money back down the chain instead of always back up the chain.